Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, and we are live. Welcome, everybody to Weather Center Live. It is 8 p.m. on January 30th, 2024. We're going to get started with our live discussion tonight. We'll try to keep it a little abbreviated. We don't have too much to discuss this evening. Let me make sure my camera is centered and ready to rock. Same thing with my microphone. We'll give it a couple moments to let some folks join in. We'll say hello, and then we'll get started because we want to talk about a very interesting setup that's going to occur over the south. And I've been seeing a lot of folks already mentioning, this is weird, this is bizarre, and it really isn't. And I know you guys have sat through a lot of my long-winded spiels and tirades. It's just different. It's a new type of system. As the title of this live stream suggests, it's a cutoff low. And we haven't seen one of those at all this winter time, and we're actually getting lucky with this system, to tell you the truth, because cutoff lows typically create a lot more havoc and chaos than this one will. And we actually got a little bit lucky in terms of the timing of this system breaking away from the polar front jet, whereas had it broken off as the Arctic jet was receding or still kind of in the picture, and we had a very robust and south-digging polar front jet, it would have been a lot more, intense, I guess you could say, in terms of what type of weather phenomena we would see with it. We would have more than likely saw widespread severe weather. We would likely, we would. It hasn't unfolded yet, so that's still kind of up in the air, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But I'm here to kind of dispel everything once again, do some damage control to what we've been hearing on the interwebs and in the YouTube sphere. There's really not going to be a whole lot of snow with this. We're going to have a lot of Four Corners, Intermountain West, Central Rockies, snowfall with it, because that is where the majority of our cold air and our polar front energy is. That delineation between our modified continental polar air that's warming up thanks to the big old ridge you can see here on the water vapor satellite shot that's already building in over interior parts of the Great Plains, the extreme easternmost front range of the Rockies. That's helping to drive a little bit of relatively warmer air from the equator to the north. And this satellite shot already does a fantastic job of showing us what's happening. If you look, jet systems or baroclinic systems that stay attached to our jet, notice how they move up and overtop this speed bump, this big old ridge. They immediately drive up to the north through the Pacific Northwest, up into British Columbia, and you can see a lot of Lee of the Mountain enhancement or Lee of the Mountain cirrus right in through here flowing off to the east. That is a clear sign that that is where our jet is moving, and a lot of the systems that do stay attached to our polar front jet are going to move up and out and prevent a lot of that snowfall from making into the northern central plains, the Midwest. We might see a little bit of Great Lakes snow effect because of what we have coming down on the front side of this ridge. You can kind of see we have one system dropping in like so, kind of kamikazeing, no pun intended, the Great Lakes, the Midwest region, bringing with it a little bit of extra rainfall, a little bit of snow activity, nothing too hellacious as we've seen over the last couple of systems that have moved through that area, and it'll be out of our United States AOR before we know it. And then, as always, we got our subtropical jet really screaming along. You can see all this upper-level cloud cover, the moisture highlighting where that subtropical jet is. And in comparison to our polar front jet, it almost looks like the subtropical jet is a little bit stronger than what our polar front jet is doing, at least for the time being. As this system works its way off to the west and we get a little bit more of that jet energy into the west coast, that is going to change. But all right, let's go ahead and say hello to a few folks. Joseph, hello everybody. Not going to be able to catch you live. Hectic night at work, but we'll catch up later when I get home. I appreciate that, Joseph. Thanks for dropping a comment in regardless. Amanda Kirby, welcome in. Mick and Marley, evening. Good to see you. Zenful, hello there. Sam Astapasta, thank you very much for joining tonight. What's going on? I guess we're going to have a very, very intimate group tonight. Very intimate group, unless people are just kind of late to the party. We'll see. Thou shalt be visited of the Lord of hosts with thunder and with earthquakes and great noise, with storms and tempests and the flame of devouring fire. Jason Lee. Very, very intense Bible verse to start the live stream. We're going to need PM here, it seems like, because we're going to have some comments floating into the chat. But anyways, guys, that's the big picture weather pattern for the time being. Let's go ahead and move on to our 1,000 to 500 thickness, or I should say this is our 500 millibar heights. And just as I referenced in my video yesterday, which kind of did okay, today's video, once again, thanks to the YouTube gods, is flopping. And again, I consider it more of a self-inflicted blow. I haven't been very consistent, but as I told you guys, I'm going to be a little bit more habitual with producing my content. Probably going to take a break tomorrow because we really aren't anticipating a big change in our our weather pattern. We're still kind of in the lull. So probably going to take a break tomorrow, and then we'll resume our regularly scheduled programming for Thursday and Friday, but we will continue to post updates on Instagram and TikTok for those of you who follow Sam. So you can look out for the short little blurbs there. But here you have it. This is our very, very meridional pattern. As we introduce even more jet energy to the Pac Northwest and the west coast of British Columbia, notice how that ridge continues to build very, very greatly. In fact, breaching the northern Canadian territories all the way up towards the northern periphery of Canada itself, getting up into those territories and the island pieces up here. That's how sharp amplitude of a ridge we have building in. If you look at the way this trough is oriented, it's dipping down very south. It's dipping all the way down as far south as Southern California, approaching Los Angeles, San Diego. And then to give you a reference of how extensive this sharp amplitude ridge is, we're getting up into the northern portions of Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, and then even beyond that. So this is a textbook omega block. Textbook omega block. And the reason I'm putting emphasis on that is, again, one of my biggest gripes with the YouTube sphere is I get all these recommended weather pages, and they're blowing up. They're super popular, 50, 100,000, 200,000 views, and they start their video off already with the wrong information. And I'm just going to leave it at that. We have a textbook omega block, which is exactly why that trough that's rapidly trying to dig into the west coast is going to allow some of that breakaway energy to move south of our omega block and actually create a Rex block. And it's going to transition gears pretty quickly, and I'll take you a little bit further through time. At about the 72-hour point, you can see that negative tilt starting to really take hold. Here is the abundance of our coldest air. This is where our thickness is the coldest, and you can see our cool air, which is also the main reason why I've mentioned that we're really going to get lucky with this system, because a lot of the cold, bona fide air is going to stay back in the cold or the poleward sector of our outlining jet as it moves to the north and the apex of this ridge. And what we have here is a weak breakaway segment. It's a short wave or a cluster of vorticity that's going to break off the southern base of it and shoot underneath our ridge axis as it kind of topples over. Now you can see our ridge is no longer oriented north to south, but it's actually oriented southeast to northwest, with our trough looking all sorts of funky and elongated out to the west. And this is our breakaway piece of jet energy that's going to drift underneath it and kind of cut off our anticyclone to the north. And the main reason we're getting lucky is because typically, and there you have it right there, it is totally cut off. You can see it has completely detached itself from our main steering flow at 300 and 500 millibars and even 200 millibars, which is pretty neat. It almost looks like biology. It almost looks like, what is it called, an embryo, a zygote splitting from one cell into two. That's kind of exactly what's happening here. We have one main entity, one primary embryo called the jet, and this breakaway piece is going to bisect itself and head southeast towards our neck of the woods, which is why we're expecting flooding conditions and high winds with this. And again, I echo the same sentiments. The reason we're getting lucky with this feature is the fact that we're really not going to have a tremendous amount of cold air break away with it. Because truthfully, cut-off features, whether it be a cyclone or an anticyclone or a meteorological nightmare, they're very difficult to forecast, and our models do a terrible job in terms of their intensity, their projected speed, and their projected path. Because as the name implies, a cut-off low is completely cut off. It's kind of just out there on its own little island. It turns into its own spherical influence. There really isn't any kind of major steering current to deter it from traveling this way or that. It just more or less does its own thing, drifting along until something picks it up. And the 500 millibar vorticity here, once again, does a great job of showing us this. You can see as that negatively tilted trough comes in, we have one area, our colder energy, back upstream of it off the west coast, while all of this extra energy kind of breaks away and drifts down to the south. And see that? Boom. Now it's completely cut off as it makes its way into the southeast quadrant of the U.S. Here's our main jet flow still to the north. You can see a short wave embedded through here, a very weak short wave, probably a minor short wave through here, some good short wave activity and vorticity moving into the Pacific Northwest and California, which is why they're going to be seeing some very, very, very hectic and torrential rainfall and flood conditions with this. But this is all by itself. Notice it's beneath our ridge. It's well beneath the ridge, and it's not really interacting with very much jet support outside of our subtropical jet. And as we all know, the subtropical jet has very, very little temperature discontinuity with it. It's more so brought on by the natural physics of the globe, which is why we're not going to get a whole lot of intensification from it. We will see a surface low really brew up because we have all this vorticity aloft, but we're not going to have that warm conveyor, that cold conveyor, the dry conveyor, the wraparound moisture, the rain snow line that we would typically see with our traditional baroclinic systems. That's not the case here. And so that's why I'm having a very hard time broadcasting or reporting to anybody that we're going to get any major severe weather with it. I'm having a hard time. The threat is definitely there, and we'll have to continue to investigate, but all in all, it just doesn't seem conducive to see, that trademark delineation between where on the leading edge we have our warm sector, instability, buoyancy, wind shear, thunderstorms, and all that. And then to the north, we'll have to find where our rain transitions to snow, possible freezing rain, icing threat, ice pellets, sleet, etc. We just don't have that. It's a uniform feature all the way around. Mick and Marley, welcome in. What's your opinion on Euro being the best on storm forecasting? I truthfully do not believe that there is any model that is the best at forecasting. I do believe some models have a better proven track record, but all models have limitations, and that's why we have so many of them, because as human analysts, we bring that human element into weather forecasting, and we can make a determination looking at a conglomeration or a combo of multiple model platforms at multiple spectrums, like the large scale looking at the US, to the smaller scale looking at, say, the Southeast, to the micro scale looking at the state of Florida, and then even further from there go down to, like, say, the Davenport, Haines City area where some of us live. I live. Euro has a proven track record, but there have been plenty of times in my recent, kind of just run in weather forecasting for the YouTube sphere and all that, Euro has definitely dropped the ball. All of our models are going to do it. It's natural. They're computer models, and all they do is they model the atmosphere, as the name implies. They're really not perfect. No model is ever going to be perfect, and if it ever is, I'd be a little more freaked out that we probably have Terminators running around in the streets. So at that point, weather probably isn't even a concern. We're probably fighting Skynet, if that makes sense and answers your question. Euro does have a proven track record in terms of the development of systems. It tends to struggle with intensity. I've definitely noticed that, and it can be very conservative in its intensity forecasts, which could be very devastating in certain situations, a la the hurricane season. But we'll get into that as we get closer to hurricane time. We're going to show you the surface and 1,000 to 500 thickness, because again, the 1,000 to 500 thickness does an excellent job at identifying why it is we might not see a whole lot of severe weather with this, outside of maybe some high gradient level winds and really good rainfall associated with it. Lots of precipitation for Puerto Rico around February 7th and 8th. Kevin, we'll go ahead and take a look at that at the back end of this video here. We're only 13 minutes in, and I'm already kind of screaming through all the information I have to present to you guys. PM, welcome back. Installing furniture. Nice to see you. We'll see you in a little bit. Dark Earth, welcome back to you as well. Haven't seen you in quite a while in the live streams. Thank you very much for joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the clock to Saturday afternoon, and I'm going to show you guys the problem with why everyone is forecasting snow and all this other stuff and all that crazy, whatever. So as I've mentioned, this system is going to cut off. And as you can see here, if you guys look very carefully, it might be a little difficult for you guys to see where you are. I can't really zoom in like I can when I'm using CapCut to edit my videos. But if you look at the way if you look at the way our thickness is outlined here, you can see how the ridge is very readily apparent in the red shades. And then you can see how our trough of cool air is becoming very, very negatively tilted, very elongated and stretched out. A negative tilt doesn't always mean immediate severe weather. And in this case, that's actually quite the opposite. We don't really have a bona fide negatively tilted trough supporting a baroclinic system or a textbook low feature that has a definitive cold front, warm front, or occluded front if it's further along in its life cycle. What's happening here is because of the blocking ridge, we're trying to slide some of that cold air underneath the ridge to take the path of least resistance, which is, believe it or not, what weather always wants to do. It's just because it's never usually allowed to, we get such severe weather at times. The Mother Nature, I don't know why I came up with so many other M word substitutes there. The jet and the cold air wants to take the path of least resistance and continue to flow in a west to east fashion. But because of this omega block sharp amplitude ridge that's in place, it's going to have to try to punch through it, and only a small amount of it is going to be able to do so. And if you look now specifically at our low, here is the low undergoing cyclogenesis or development, and you can see our red thickness lines are actually moving up like this. So we actually do have some pretty decent decent warm air advection out ahead of it, but because we're losing that cold air, we're not really seeing that, intensification that we would, like the last system that we storm chased, or even the one after that where we had the cold front pushing in, squall line, very organized line of a leading edge of a cold air mass. We're leaving that cold air mass behind. And so we're really not going to see the rapid intensification of our thunderstorms as that cold air plunge occurs. And if you look at this chart here, we don't even really have a really good polar high pressure or any high pressure back behind this system to suggest that there's any cold air advection really with it. And by now here, if you look very closely, I'll go to 144 hours, boom, this is a perfect example. If you look, we have red thickness lines like this in the center of this low. They are cooler thickness values, but they're not cold thickness values. There's really no cold air associated with this. There's remnant modified polar air still stuck in the middle of it, since if you imagine a big blob of cold air, a small little blip broke off of it, and naturally it's going to carry some of those characteristics as it moves, but since we're moving underneath a warmer ridge and we're moving underneath an area that can't really sustain that cold air, it's going to modify, it's going to change. And that's why I'm very confused that some people are saying, tornado outbreak, severe weather, look out, snowstorm. It's like, this is not the same system. This is a different type of system. We haven't dealt with it yet, and it's kind of weeding out the folks who have seen them before, who have dealt with them before, and actually have a bit of an understanding of meteorology versus the folks who, don't. And in this case, this is more than likely going to be a pressure gradient, non-convective wind event for a lot of folks in the south and the southeast, and the mid-Atlantic especially. We'll talk about that here in a moment. And we could see some very heavy rain with this. And the reason why we got lucky, and I'll say it, probably 7 more times in this live stream, but typically when cold core lows break away from the jet, as the name implies, we have a lot of cold air stuck at the top of these systems. And what ends up happening is, if it comes over top an area that's much warmer, let's say, for instance, we didn't have that front come through down here in the southeast, to where in the mornings now it's kind of chilly, especially with a little bit of a wind chill out there, and then in the afternoons we're fairly mild. Let's say it had come through the weekend prior to this upcoming weekend when it was still very warm, very muggy, and we had some colder air entrenched in the upper levels of this pocket. What happens is, basic thermodynamics, that cold air is going to rush down to the ground and be replaced by that warm air. And what happens, as you guys can see, is turbulent mixing, that replacing of the air in the upper levels versus the low levels. That's what causes very bad thunderstorm activity, and that's called cold core convection or cold core thunderstorm activity. And that can be very difficult to forecast because it's kind of like popcorn. It's kind of like when you microwave something and how you hear the pops from outside of the microwave and it just goes pop, 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 or like popcorn, literally. You pop a bag of popcorn and you hear just popping off in the microwave. Same concept. There's no definitive line. There's no large-scale feature driving it that you can track. And in this case, we're not going to have that because there's just not a lot of cold air out there. There's not a lot of temperature contrast to create chaos. And you can see we do have a bit of a thermal or thickness ridge coming back towards the low as we start to see a little bit of embedded cyclogenesis once it does run into the subtropical jet. And the subtropical jet is going to take over it until it can rejoin the polar front up to the northeast here. You can see all of our blue thickness lines very closely stacked together. And eventually, once it kicks offshore, that's when you see it get absorbed and boom, gets pulled away very rapidly. And then we have our next bona fide little low pressure system beginning to form up out here. And now you can see that cold air is coming down. Here's our 534 line, 528 line. This is a more textbook cold air versus warm air scenario. So this could possibly bring some more snowfall if this shakes out as we get into the second weekend of February. And that's, to be determined. Well, that's exactly what I was just explaining, PM, before you reappeared, actually. That's exactly why I was explaining that we're really not going to see a whole lot of severe weather with this system. Twilight Firefly, welcome in. Thank you very much for joining us. How close are we? Thank you very much for joining. Alfalfa Bill, enjoy. The GFS is already starting to show the cold showing up around the 15th in Iowa. I'm so tired of winter, man. Give me spring or give me death. We can go ahead and talk about that here in a second. I was actually going to bring up the 18Z GFS and see what that continuity run is looking like for us. Super Charas, welcome in. Daniel Lawson, 13-hour day, got off at 1 a.m. Wish I had some rain to scare off annoying customers. Sheesh, wow, that is wild. DPK Fish Aquariums, welcome back to the live stream. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, so there's the Euro. That's my little long-winded spiel in terms of why this system is going to be a little different and very weird in terms of how it reacts with our setup out here over the south and southeast. Here's our 18Z GFS. We'll take this through time. I have not looked at this yet. I was looking at 12 Zulu earlier before making a video. And, yeah, see, so same depiction, same thing. Very, very heavy rainfall. We just don't have a whole lot of instability and stark contrast between air masses. And even here, you can see what's weird is we actually have this same type of energy or the same type of thickness values all the way out here as we do down here. So there isn't a whole lot of support for this system. That is wild. A 975 millibar low. I don't know about that happening, but we're going to definitely have to watch that if that does shake out, because that could be a monstrosity of a system as it does push across the Four Corners area. The California and the Pac Northwest is going to get slammed with rainfall and very high winds and good onshore flow regardless. But then see, there you have it. It kind of just wanders through as a very conglomerative mess. Discombobulated, large-scale broad low. And it almost looks like we can try to find our very weak minor short waves embedded within this thing. There's one here, one there, one there. And you can see it's its own little sphere. It's its own little sphere. It's very neat and very interesting how these systems work because they're their own little breakaway entity of energy. And even the GFS at 18 Zulu is doing a great job of showing this. And I wouldn't really think that with these thunderstorms out here, if they're even thunderstorms, we're really seeing severe weather. This is probably more so bouts of very heavy rainfall. And I do think from what I've looked at in terms of our instability, if anything, I know no one from that AOR is probably watching. I would think the Bahamas and further to the south and Cuba, maybe getting into the Cayman Islands, could see some more impacts with this just based on the energy that comes south once it starts to interact with our subtropical jet. And then we'll take this out a little further in time. We'll see what the GFS thinks is going to happen with that next frontal system that comes in. Doesn't really look like much. It doesn't really look like much. We finally clear our blocking ridge out of the pattern. We'll have to watch this. If this actually happens, we'll have to see what happens. I believe this is maybe what Alfalfa was talking about a little bit ago. Cold air trying to come back down to the south. But even then, it looks like we're under a zonal flow. So it really doesn't do much. It does come in for the northern tier United States, but it looks like us down here in the south are still feeling El Nino, still feeling subtropical jet, still feeling very mild winter conditions, and not a lot of rainfall. But then again, of course, we're far into La La Land. This is Valentine's Day, February 14th at 18Z. So, of course, we're going to see very massive deviations in this, but it's very interesting to see that the cold air is kind of poised up there for perhaps one last plunge before winter really does start to say its goodbyes. Because we got to remember, guys, as we get through February and it started getting into March, we're going to start seeing winter begin to take its course and leave for all intents and purposes. We'll be entering transition season. We'll still get our fronts, and we'll still get our severe weather, and our tornado potential will likely go up, but that's mainly because we're going to have our residual winter storms trying to still come south, while we're also trying to warm up down here near the southern tier, the desert southwest, the southern plains, the southeast, across the Gulf of Mexico, the Bahamas, etc. So that's the main reason why tornado season tends to ramp up, because you have spring trying to come up from the south and take hold during March and especially April, and you still have these pushes of cold air trying to come in and move with our amplified jet pattern before it finally fully recedes back to the north once we get into May, June, and especially the summertime of July. Let's see here. So we'll take a look at our ML Cape first. We'll go back to 12 Zulu because I just trust the 12Z a little bit more than I do our 18 Zulu. And we'll go back down, or we'll just kind of watch the south from this perspective, and we'll take this through time. And if you look, our models have been very, very back and forth. Very back and forth. Like, see, this model run here is showing very low amounts of CAPE, maybe between 5 to 800 joules per kilogram off the west coast of Florida. It actually looks like it's backed off pretty tremendously for Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and even the Florida Panhandle. If you come back to, I think it was 12Z yesterday, as a matter of fact, yeah, look at that. We have a lot more ML CAPE down there, way more surging through the Florida Peninsula, just a lot more that would suggest very severe weather is likely. This is already getting up into the 12 to 1400 joules per kilogram here, and that's why I really do think the verdict is still very much so out in terms of if we're going to see any kind of severe weather with this. The chances of getting some thunder and lightning from it are there. I definitely do think we're going to have some occasional lightning strikes and some claps of thunder. but we're just seeing too much wiggling and wobbling with our models in terms of what our ML CAPE is looking like. Even at 18Z, look at the difference. It's not as much of a difference, but at 18Z, the GFS is thinking that we're actually going to get some of that CAPE to mix into Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, with the Florida Peninsula finally starting to see maybe somewhere upwards creeping into that 800,000 joules per kilogram threshold before we see a little bit of intensification and modification thanks to the Gulf Stream off the coastline. So the models, like I told you guys at the beginning of the live stream, they're struggling. They don't know how to handle these systems. They really don't. They're a nightmare. And honestly, the best thing you can do when analyzing and trying to forecast for these cutoff systems is just kind of watch them go and extrapolate. So once this cutoff low begins to form over the four corners and we can see it over the central and southern plains, then we can start to track it and kind of get a better feel of what our analysis data is suggesting could happen out ahead of it. Definitely not thinking snowfall. We'll actually transition over to that real quickly. Definitely not thinking snowfall. And even 18Z GFS here, no snow. I've been seeing lots of video coverage, again, for some strange reason, ignoring the fact that we're probably going to see more flooding for the Gulf Coast states. We could even see some very heavy rainfall in the Florida Peninsula, and then really good onshore flow that's going to create lots of dangerous rip currents, good onshore beach erosion, etc. for the Carolinas. But everyone's videos out there are mentioning snowfall for this whole area. Some people are even saying snowfall for Georgia and South Carolina. And I'm like, where are you guys getting this cold air from? Where are you pulling this cold air from? Do you guys not understand that this is an entirely different setup? Entirely. We don't have a cold front with it. And if we do, it's very weak. We don't have a warm conveyor. We don't have any jet support, really, until it finally gets sucked in by the subtropical jet. We're not going to see any kind of major advection. And I noticed this earlier, too. I'll bring you guys back to 12Z GFS, because I used this in my video, and our temperature advection charts here do an excellent job of showing you guys what it is that I'm talking about with this system. So if you look, this is Monday, I should say Sunday night. This is 0Z on Monday, Sunday night at 7 p.m. And if you look very closely, we actually have warm air hints of warm air advection all through here. And then as you can see, we have hints of cold air advection all through here. And I know this looks like a very weird mess of ink that I just drew for you guys, but I'm trying to show you that there's no discernible air mass change. There's no real fluctuation in temp or dew point. There's some dry air mixing in there, that's for certain. And if there was actual cold air advection, then yeah, a heck of a lot of thunderstorm activity will be firing up with this, but it's just a very weird amalgamation of different, modifying air masses and environmental conditions. And you can see all of our real bona fide cold air is going to be entrained up into the northeast, and this system really isn't going to do a whole lot to try to pull it back down. Let me clear the ink. And you can see it really doesn't start to pull much cold air at all. In fact, here's our 0 degree line at 850 millibars, and it recedes shortly after this system comes in, thanks to even more warm air that's going to just be surging from the north like this. So really no chance for snow. We might see some higher terrain snowfall. That's about it. So if you really want to get snow and say that you're your forecast verified, you can drive 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet up and get up in the mountains and take a picture and be like, woo, snow. I mean, that's to each their own, I guess. We'll go to Weather Prediction Center and see what they're thinking with this system. So, yeah, look, they don't even know what's happening. I'm going to laugh right now because they don't even know what is going on with this system. Look at this. We used to laugh at this in synoptic land whenever we were drawing charts back in Air Force weather. Look at this. I feel bad for talking smack, but they don't really know what's happening with this cutoff system. They have a front here, they have a stationary boundary here, they have a front here, an occluded front, and a warm front. What in the heck? That would suggest, when you look at it from the perspective of the law of thermodynamics, how you actually analyze for these systems, that would suggest we have an air mass here. That would suggest we have an air mass here. 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 Like, that's how you know that this is just, this is bad. This is definitely, not an ideal setup for almost anything. And just looking at this right here, I would already deduce we might not see very much severe weather with it. We might not. It's probably not going to be the case. Corbin Butler, welcome in. How close are we? Models were showing the cold plunge coming more south a few days ago. That has since disappeared. Yeah. It tried to pull in a little bit more of, pulling a little bit more energy, but it just doesn't quite look like it's going to get there. That blocking ridge is going to take hold according to our models, but of course, we'll have to see what happens. April Brooks, welcome in. This could be a subtropical entity. Alberto, forgive me if I sound... Oh, no, you're not hyping. That's just all in good fun, PM. I do agree, though. I will admit, and we can take a look at it right now to see if 12Z has anything out there, but just as a guilty pleasure, I've been looking at our European ensembles to see if maybe they might hint at a little bit of, subtropical, tropical development. And let's see if 12Z has anything for us. So 96, 120, 144, 168, 190. Nope. So nothing. There was, look at that. That's very weird. You want to see something very crazy. Let's switch AORs and let's go to, let's see, can we get off? Here we go. Look at this. Now that's very interesting. Look at those tropical depression probabilities. What the heck is that? What is that? Euro is thinking on Friday, the 2nd of February, there's all the way up to an 85% chance of tropical depression formation off the Pac Northwest coast. That is awesome. I feel like I should make a video just trolling everybody on that. And I won't do it. That's real bad and, unprofessionalism, but that is awesome to see. That gets me kind of like excited for when the real tropical season comes in and we can start broadcasting stuff like this. Oh yeah, probabilities are going back up. We got to watch for development. But according to the 12Z Euro, we could have a tropical depression forming up off the Pacific Northwest coastline. Just for fun, I'm going to switch over to tropical storm and see what the tropical storm model looks like. Look at that. Tropical storm is all the way up there to 90%. The tropical storm probability is all the way up to 90%. That we could see formation up there off the Pacific Northwest coastline. That is incredible. What does the hurricane ensemble look like? Okay, nothing. I was a little concerned there. I was a little nervous that the Euro was forecasting hurricane probabilities off the Pac Northwest. That's kind of neat, though. Very bizarre what it's looking at there, though. 90% chance of seeing tropical storm formation. And that right there, I already forgot your username. I apologize. My Puerto Rico viewer, Kevin. There's your answer right there. This is the Euro, and a lot of people swear by the Euro, so technically, given that we have a 90% favorability, we should have whatever the A-named storm is for 2024 forming up off the Pac Northwest as early as January. Obviously, that's not going to happen, guys. Don't panic. I'm not anyone who's just tuning in. If you're exiting the video or something like that because you think I'm actually buying into this, then I don't know what to tell you. That's not going to happen. What it's showing here is, a very deep cyclone and a very concentrated, consolidated cyclone that's going to form up and move up to the north over our ridge. It's a baroclinic jet-supported system, but to kind of go back to what, Kevin, you were asking earlier, a lot of folks swear by the Euro and say it's the best. If it ain't on a Euro, it ain't happening. And, well, if that's the case, then for all you folks out there who praise the European model, we should have tropical storm whoever for the Pacific side of the AOR kicking off here on Friday. Hurricane season has begun. I should make a video like that. The hurricane season has officially kicked off, or like everybody else loves to say, the tropics are waking up. That's not even the tropics up there. That's the mid-latitudes. But speaking of the ensembles, we'll go ahead and come over to the control MSLP for the U.S. so we can get an idea of what the ensembles are thinking with this system as it breaks off. And even the Euro ensembles have kind of backed off in terms of intensity. For a while there, our ensembles are trying to take this thing down below 990 millibars, and you can see those have really waned off as well. Now the grand takeaway here let's go back to 12Z. Even here, 12 Zulu, the exact same thinking, maybe 998, trying to get down into 996, and even then the Euro is not giving it a whole vote of confidence that once it gets off the coastline, it's really going to deepen into much of anything. It's going to kind of just dissipate and really modify out before it dies off entirely, trying to head down to the south. So in fact, actually, Kevin, if you're still in the chat, maybe that's why your guys are thinking we're going to get rain down there in Puerto Rico, because according to the Euro ensembles looking long range, this thing kind of dissipates and wanders down towards the tropics and potentially drops a little bit of extra precip down there. We'll transition real fast. I'm not sure if he's even still in the live stream. We'll take a look down there just to see if that's exactly what could possibly be happening. Yeah, look at that. So it looks like we get a little bit of frontal energy with that system pushing in, and that's exactly why we're going to see some really good chances at rainfall for Haiti, Dominican Republic, the Bahamas for sure. Looks like Cayman Islands are going to get in the action. Jamaica definitely getting towards Puerto Rico. And then, yeah, as that system kind of just makes a dip, dive, duck, and dodge to the south, your rain chances, especially for the Leeward Islands, U.S. British Virgin Islands, Antigua, Barbuda, our familiar areas from tropics, from tropical season, are going to see some rain from this system. And as I mentioned, again, guys, look at how disgusting it is to try to track this system. It's going like this. It's doing all this. That's how you know it's a cutoff system. It's not really doing much of anything. It's not going to be a textbook Bear Clinic system. And in fact, it looks like it rips into thirds here. You have one system that juts out to the south, one system that juts up to the north, and another piece of energy that juts straight off to the east right there. It just gets kind of ripped apart. It goes all over the place. I do like the Icon. Yeah, the Icon is a very good model. The Icon does very good in preliminary stages of development as well. The Canadian model definitely did a very good job during last hurricane season. It earned a lot of my respect and credibility when it predicted the crap out of Hurricane Idalia and even storms thereafter. So I don't know. I like a fine mix. I definitely do like a very fine mixture of things. I like a variety. I like looking at the Euro. I do get a little more excited when I do see the Euro is in agreement with the Canadian or even the GFS that tends to go on the extreme side of things sometimes. The Icon usually measures up really well with the Euro. In fact, on my TikTok update, I think it was yesterday, I actually mentioned how the Canadian model and the GFS looked almost exactly the same, and the Icon and the European model looked almost exactly the same, as if they were ebbing and flowing with one another. So I thought that was very interesting. But yeah, guys, there you have it. Storm Prediction Center doesn't really have much highlighted for us just yet. In fact, the only thing on their charts is the risk for some thunderstorm activity as you get into day 3. And they don't even have a marginal risk with that stuff. It's just thunderstorm potential for the West Coast as our trough begins to dig its way in. And then from there, when they say predictability too low, what they're saying is there is a chance, there's a shot, but it's just too ambiguous, too blurred out, blurred between the lines for them to highlight something on the chart. There's nothing very definitive at this point. So yeah, I mean, that's all she wrote right now. And I know folks out there are anticipating that February is going to be a blistering, crazy month. But so far, there's really not much out there on the horizon. Nothing that stands out. We have this potential Arctic plunge that's going to try to make itself known as we get into February, the middle parts of February. But again, that's going to adjust very greatly. So we'll really have to wait and see. I still do think that right about at this time, it's very interesting to see that the GFS is kind of hinting at it as well. I do really believe, since we're in a hiatus, that there is at least one more big storm system that will show itself over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I do think it's going to be sometime around Valentine's Day, if not shortly thereafter. We'll definitely have something more in line to track on our charts as compared to this very, very erroneous, just run-of-the-mill, look at this and then look at that, and it's all over the place. Right now we're in a very weird period, and there's really not a whole lot happening. We have this cutoff low, this bowling ball low, as I like to put it, gonna barrel through the south, but, all in all, we're not gonna see a whole lot with it. And before we wrap up, I'll show you guys the winds that I was talking about earlier in terms of, especially for the mid-Atlantic coastline. We'll have to keep a close eye out on them. As you can see, the gradient around this system does try to intensify. You can see some really good onshore flow, so we'll probably have quite a bit of good surf. If you're a surfer and you feel proficient enough along the Gulf Coast, some probably good swells to catch out there, some beach erosion. Gotta watch out for the rip currents, that's for certain. And then eventually, as that wind component shifts gears, we're going to get some very good onshore flow that could possibly mixed in with the rainfall. We could see some coastal flooding, some very light coastal flooding. We'll see as we get closer to the weekend if they start putting out some coastal advisories for the Big Bend and west coast of Florida down towards Tampa, St. Pete, into the Bay Area and into the Fort Myers area as well. And then if you look at that wind component for North and South Carolina, that's where we really got to watch closely. They're going to be buffeted with easily tropical storm force winds for sure as this system comes in. This is already well within that tropical storm level threshold. This is above 40 knots, a nice little channeling of corridor, or a nice corridor of winds mainly brought on because of this deepening surface low and our very belligerent 1029 polar high that's still up over the northeast that some folks are thinking is going to help to drive the snow. I don't think it is. And so we're just going to have a really good, nice little wind tunnel that forms up here. So my area that we want to watch for any watches or warnings for high winds come out is going to be the mid-Atlantic region, maybe getting up into the southwest or southeast tip of Virginia. North and South Carolina and coastal Georgia are going to have to watch this bad boy for sure. But, you know, all in all, this is just going to be a big old rain and wind event. If you go back in time on the Euro and look at our 24-hour precip, as that rain comes through, we're going to see some very good totals with it as it moves across the southeast. Some very localized instances approaching that 3-inch threshold, with the general average being around 1 to 1.5 inches for just about everybody down over the south. And once again, Florida's looking a little weird. It looks like the western half of the state, if not the upper periphery of it, is where we're going to see some of our heavier accumulations. And a large, I'd say like 90-80% chunk of the peninsula could see around an inch, you know, maybe, depending on how much of this rain swath stays together. That's probably a glitch. The SSTs, sea surface temps in the East Pacific, are most definitely not warm enough for... Oh, yeah, no, April Brooks, I was just joking around. If you're talking about those tropical cyclone parameters, I was just having a laugh. I thought that was hilarious that the Euro was actually all the way up to 90% chance of tropical storm formation. I thought that was hilarious. Hurricane Cat 5 coming to Florida. Be prepared for a lot of power outages. Oh boy. It's too early to start hyping. We'll get there though. Very soon. As a matter of fact, Thursday, we'll have to take a look and see if we have new Climo data to talk about. We'll do a Thursday night, very brief live stream for my birthday, and we'll see if our climate data has updated so we can talk tropics on Thursday, especially if we really don't see any big changes with this upper low system that's going to move through, and we'll digest and dive into what's happening out in California and the Pacific Northwest. Travis Cranford, welcome in. This just got where... I know, that's what everybody's been saying. I watched a few other videos about this same system where, of course, ramping up, getting worse, getting more intense. In fact, you know what? While we're on the live stream, guys, since we're 42 minutes into the live, we're going to do it. We're going to go into that territory, and we'll go into my YouTube and see if we get any more extravagant recommendations and see. There it is. Major winter storm could slam areas with 1 foot of snow as record heat to impact... What? What? I'm going to quickly scroll past that. Let's see. That was from 3 weeks ago. That's not actually happening. Okay, so yeah, here it is. Here we go. Yep. Multiple storms coming. Feet of snow. Heavy flood. Now, the heavy flooding I agree with. The feet of snow, no. Multiple storms, Damaging winds, possible. All right, that's enough. We'll go ahead and close that out before we get caught. But there you have it. I don't know what that was talking about. I hope you guys didn't catch the username, but I don't know what's going on there. Record heat and major snowstorm. Like, where are we getting this from, folks? I really kind of want to go back and watch that video and see what's going on, because I am not seeing any... in comparison to what we've already had, I don't see any major winter storms on the horizon at all until maybe the middle of February. And even then, I mean, like, just taking a look at this, we can scroll through time. This is already February 5th. There's really nothing out there. Not much. Looks like maybe another flood threat, February 13th, getting into Valentine's Day. Yeah, I mean, honestly, even on the GFS here on February 15th, we get that cold plunge, but there's really not a whole lot of moisture or rainfall, snow associated with it. So I don't know what's happening. I guess I'm missing the mark somewhere, and there's something major happening. Now, don't get me wrong. Before we wrap the live stream, I'm going to mention California is definitely taking a beating right now. That's for certain. And the feet of snow, if you really want to throw that in your forecast, then, again, you can ascend the slopes of the Rocky Mountains and go find it. But we're not going to see very heavy snowfall in the neighborhood area, the urbanized areas. We're just not going to see it. where these baroclinic systems do transition up the backside of the ridge, headed up into Canada. Could we see some snowfall down in the lower terrain areas of the Pacific Northwest, Idaho, Montana, maybe getting into Utah, northern Nevada near the Sierras, maybe even the Front Range of Colorado, and even that I think is a little gratuitous because we're definitely underneath that ridge. Yeah, we could see some snowfall. I mean, you look over here and you could see that, I mean, we try to get a little bit of snow going, but if you look, this is predominantly over the higher terrain. For those of you who aren't familiar too much with the topography out there, I'm still very much familiar with it because the Western AOR is what I was very accustomed to forecasting for during my time in Air Force weather. This is all the Front Range of the Rockies. The Front Range of Montana, where our missile complexes is. We have, or our missile complexes are. We have the Front Range of the Wyoming area just before the missile complexes and the bases out there. Front Range of Colorado, I'm extremely familiar with all the downsloping and freezing rain events I've predicted for out in that region. It's all higher terrain snowfall. So I don't know where we're getting, you know, and I don't mean to go on another one of these tangents, but it's just such a bummer because my videos and everybody that's actually giving the good information is just getting by the YouTube algorithm because I think people are just hunting for snow at this point. They just want to hear snow. They want to tune into Days of Our Lives a la the Weather Channel. And it's a shame. I don't know. But yeah, and if you go a little further in time, notice the GFS has completely removed any kind of snowfall out there entirely. Removed it all together. I think yesterday, once again, at 12 Zulu, if I go, but yeah, see, at 12Z yesterday, the model was thinking we could see a little bit of, once again, Appalachian Mountain snowfall. That's all higher terrain out there in Virginia and North Carolina. And that's it. It very quickly comes and goes. Look at that. We have 1, 2, and 3. 3 panels of it hitting the lee side of the Appalachian Mountains there in North Carolina and Virginia, and then boom, gone. If you go before that, I think 12Z on Sunday, I don't think we had any snowfall on Sunday. Oh, no, here we go. This is why people were going crazy. Shame on you, GFS. Shame on you. Now I see it. This is why everybody was going nutso and why everyone is still predicting snow. That is absurd. Shame on you, GFS. Kevin, if you're still there, we're going to go back to your earlier question. There you have it. GFS does good, does bad sometimes. This is definitely... what in the heck is going on here? That doesn't make any sense. Snow, I guess, for Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, according to the GFS on Sunday. That's wild, because I guess we're just that cold in these areas. Let me see what the sounding looks like for this time. This doesn't even make sense. It's forecasting snow, and the sounding is entirely above freezing. And we have such a huge warm layer between 925 millibars all the way up to just below 700 millibars. We have a warm layer. So, you know, this is how you know people aren't really looking at the parameters. They're just kind of looking at where it shows blue, and then I got to make a video. There's the blue, snow. Look out. Feet of snow. Historic. You know? And even earlier iterations of this storm system in the south looked far more menacing. This was on Sunday, and that definitely looks like a possible severe weather event for Florida if this came to fruition. We have a 995 millibar, 993, 994, 998, 997. Starts to deepen once again as it gets over the Florida Peninsula. This could have been a severe weather setup. Another one of those subtropical style entities like PM you were saying earlier coming through the Florida Peninsula. But that very quickly changed, and we have nothing even remotely. Look at that. If I switch between the models and I don't change the timestamp, we go from this, a very organized, intense upper low, to this. Much less menacing. Very much less menacing. So, you know, we'll have to see what shakes out. There's still time. There's still time for something big to pop up. But yeah, we're getting closer to closing time. I do think by Wednesday, if not Thursday for sure, we'll have a really firm idea on if we need to really investigate for severe weather. Missile silos are in Montana. Remember this? Yep, you're correct. It's not like they state where the feet of snow will be. You can't put anything on them, and people live in the mountains too. You know, I mean, you can and you can't. You definitely can, because that would still be considered clickbait, because it gives people false hope for the folks out there who are rooting for the snow. Because there are a lot. I've been looking at comments more than I've been watching the videos. And there's actually a lot of people in the South, thanks to El Nino, who are like, I really want to see snow. Like, I could use a nice little dusting of snow. I'm excited. I hope that your forecast comes true. Like I saw in videos, I think it was yesterday evening before bed, there were a few folks commenting who were like, ooh, I can't wait. I hope you're right. South Carolina, Georgia, we're going to get some snow. And then it's like, you're giving these people, you're getting their hopes up. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. That's like if I watched a video and they said there's a Category 5 coming for Florida, I'd be like, yay, let's do this. I'm going out. And then nothing happens. I'd be like, whack. I don't know if you guys have seen that GIF. Whack. You know? So I get where you're coming from. How close are we? They're very gray. They're very mysterious. Like, where is the feet of snow? And that's the clickbait. It gets you to click. Like, where are we going to see feet of snow? What does this person have to say? And then as soon as you get into it, it's readily apparent that they just put that there to get you to click on it. And in my opinion, I'd feel like I have egg all over my face if I was like, oh, snap, feet of snow. This is going to be big. Hey, welcome back to the video, guys. We're going to go ahead and talk about the snowfall over the mountains. So if you're looking for ski weather, here you got it. I'd be like, well, all right. No snow's happening. Click off. That would be me here in central North Carolina, still hoping for some snow. See, and you know, like, there's that remote chance. There's that remote chance, of course. There's always a possibility in the meteorology field. There's always that shot. But in this case, I would definitely be shocked if we saw snowfall, especially where you are. Further to the west, over the higher terrain, especially as I mentioned at the very beginning of this live stream, your cold air in these systems is usually further up in the atmosphere. So as that hits the terrain and we get a little bit of that orographic or that mechanical ramp effect of the moisture sucked into it or entrenched in it, that's where you could get some good mountain terrain snowfall, and you'll get a nice little dusting to see the snow caps over the mountains. But in terms of actually being a bona fide snow system or winter storm, as some people are advertising, that's not going to happen. At best, if we saw a huge fluctuation, a huge change that blew us out of the water, at best for your area, Twilight, I would say a dusting. We'll see some snow flurries, and they won't stick, and that's it. That would be my, like, extreme, like, if I'm swinging for the fence in my forecast, I would probably predict snow flurries, and then they'll disappear. They'll melt or evaporate. An extreme, really trying to go for a grand slam home run if you're at the batter, or if you're at the pitching mound, not the pitching mound, if you're at the plate, and you're swinging and trying to go for a grand slam and get everybody to home base, that would be somebody saying, you know, couple inches of snow. And I'm sure if we were to look, someone out there is probably saying 3, 4, 5 inches of snow for your area in South Carolina and so on. And you're really swinging that bat as hard as you possibly can. To stay on the conservative side and go for a single base hit, I would say for your area, if you really wanted to hear snowfall, I'd say be on the lookout for a couple flurries. Look out for maybe a little bit of caking on the ground before it melts away completely, or a glazing, and that's about it. And even that is a very, very huge, I'm still swinging hard. The problems is there are a few panels that totally skewed the means. Yeah, exactly. The resolution dorked it up. We saw that a lot during the hurricane season. The model resolution definitely messed up where we thought low formation was going to take place in the track. But yeah, guys, that's all she wrote. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping up the live stream. Feet of snow in the mountains or higher elevations, yeah. Well, I don't want snow at all, none. Oh, yeah, down here in the south, all hell would break loose if we actually got snow. It's bad enough all hell breaks loose on a daily basis on I-95 and I-4, for example. Imagine if you mixed Floridians with snowfall. Heck no. Now that would be extreme, and that's a video I would love to make. Not necessarily because of the weather itself, but because of broadcasting. Get ready for all sorts of lane closures and traffic jams and accidents because everyone's about to go insane. As of right now, all I'm doing for the birthday is we're going to do a live stream on here on Thursday night. Very brief one, just to say hello to everybody, talk weather, see if there's been any changes and have some fun, maybe look at some Climo data. And then Friday, I'm going to be getting off, hopefully going to be clocking in and clocking out of work earlier so a lot of us can go out to dinner at this place called Cooper's Hawk up off of International Drive near the theme parks. That's about it. Maybe go to Dave and Buster's. I've been craving going to a arcade. I don't know why I was going to say a theme park, an arcade for a while. Even the ensembles, though, how close are we? Really weren't hinting at very much. I was looking at some of the probabilities in the National Weather Service blend of models, and they were thinking at the most, in the higher terrain and in the hills and in the mountains, about an inch. Shoot, I wish I'll be 28. You're 2 years late. Waffle House closes for snow. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Like to join on Friday, or do you mean the live stream on Thursday? We can talk about that on X, if anything. We'll figure it out. But, all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the live stream. It is 5 to 9. I got to go ahead and get some rest. Just letting you guys know who are in the chat tonight, and those of you who will be watching, hopefully thereafter. Probably going to take a break from video content tomorrow here on the YouTube. I've done a video back-to-back yesterday and today. We'll see how those videos do. We did a live stream tonight, so tomorrow we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back to it on Thursday with a live and a hard segment, and then Friday kind of up in the air. We'll see exactly what happens because obviously, if I'm clocking into work a little earlier, I got to fit my gym time, take care of other things around the house, and, put things together for the day as well as some homework. So we'll see if I can get a video together. Maybe I'll do a very short segment. I'll try not to talk as long as I always do, which is nearly impossible for me. But yeah, that's kind of the battle rhythm for the rest of the week. Thursday, look out for more content. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, X, or Twitter, Instagram, X, or TikTok, you'll definitely continue to get those daily updates. And yeah, for the snow in the south, and May showed lots of snow for the south, which is factored in the average. So the average is showing half an inch to an inch for much of the south. I'll have to look back. I really didn't see a whole lot when I looked back at ensembles earlier today and yesterday and there before, but maybe there was something I missed. Maybe the ensembles were thinking we'd have more cold air mixing in, but we really didn't. That happened for real in Tampa in 1977 chaos. Now, see, that is historical, Kevin. That is historical, for sure. If I ever saw snow in Tampa, I would literally, I'd hype that living day. You would see hype off the charts. You would have historic levels of hype coming from me if I saw snow in Tampa. Twilight Firefly, you are very welcome. Thank you very much for joining tonight. Oh, Travis is betting on the snow. I think something will end up hitting maybe an inch or so, not much more. So Travis is thinking snowfall. We'll have to see. All the models are kind of rooting against it. Yeah, that's a good idea. I would definitely document that and provide evidence or something like that. I don't know. Because none of them, you got nothing on the models really in your corner anymore. Euro is completely out on the snowfall. I'm pretty sure the ensembles are just about all the way out on the snowfall. Let's see, precip type. Yeah, nope, just higher terrain snow. Just higher terrain snowfall. Let's go to the ensembles as of right now. Let's go to the EPS. Go to United States. We'll just look at the United States, and we'll go to the total. Do we have a total snowfall? Here we go. We'll go to total snowfall for the 12Z ensemble. And yep, higher terrain snow. That's about it. Looks like higher terrain. And the models are trying to whisper at possibly. Is that after the event already? No, they're possibly calling for like a fraction of an inch down. Oh, by the end of February. Oh, yeah, Travis. There we go. That makes a lot more sense. That definitely makes a lot more sense. Yeah. It's not over until it's over. I'm not going to say definitely no snow, definitely no this. It's never over till it's over. That's why I never like to say definitely or for sure when we're talking so far out. When we're within 24, 48 hours, I'll develop the confidence to say no or yes. But in this case, even like I was saying earlier, there's always that shot. I would take even an inch or a dusting at this point. Yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely see what happens. It really does. I've noticed that the Euro does do poorly with the snow. I actually think that the GFS does win a little bit in terms of snowfall. Canadian model, I've never really done it for snow. I know a lot of folks have been leaning on the Canadian model more so because it's been trying to produce 20, 30, 40 feet, and 40 feet, excuse me, 20, 30, 40 inches of snow. I don't know about the Canadian, and I don't think the icon even has snow on it. I've never really looked at the icon for snowfall. But, alrighty, folks, that's all she wrote. We're going to go ahead and end the live stream before I drag it out any longer. We'll talk to you guys again very soon. Again, if you follow me on my X, Twitter, or TikTok, I was going to say, nope, I said it again. If you follow me on my X, Instagram, or my TikTok, please feel free to drop me a line, drop me a message, drop me a follow. I'll always provide daily updates and information on those pieces or on those platforms because it's a little bit easier to mitigate and manage, whereas YouTube will probably come back in business on Thursday with another hard segment and a live stream Thursday night to ring in the birthday and see exactly what's changed and if we have any definitive live or high-res data for this situation as it unfolds. And then Friday, I'll probably make a video, but no live stream because I'll be out all night. So we'll see what happens. But it was a pleasure talking to everybody once again. Thank you so much for the few of you who joined tonight. I do genuinely appreciate it, and I always love to see you guys and talk weather. And, you know, more exciting days are coming. And I need to tell myself that as well with the low views and the low subscribers and all that. More exciting days are coming. And when I say more exciting, unfortunately, that comes with the caveat of more dangerous days are coming. I can feel it. I can just genuinely feel it in my gut. Like, you know, we're starting off this year very weird, very bizarre with a lot of weird weather and active weather here and there. And I do think that the rest of this year is going to be big time for sure. So we're just biding our time, having fun, enjoying the lull while we can. Because I'm telling you, I really do think we're going to be very busy later this year. Not only with the tropics, but I do think we're just going to see some real big ignitions start to happen, not only with transition season, but the transition out of our El Nino to a neutral and a La Nina, and then into the tropical season, and then we're going to see winter upside down next year because we're going to be in a totally new global pattern. So, you know, might as well have some fun, roast and talk smack while we can, and kind of just prepare to really dial it in and get serious and lock down, you know, when it comes time. So, yeah, there you have it, guys. Appreciate ya, and we'll see you again more than likely on Thursday. But until then, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.